addendums, they understand them. The contract establishes what specifically is in it. They've got the unit cost marked. The only place where there's an allowance for unit for materials is asphalt. That's all they ask for.
Right. So why did we address fluctuating prices and other stuff? That's to the advantage of the contractor, not to us.
Not necessarily, because if the price comes down on something, then we would be able to take advantage of that.
They're probably not going to tell you that. They're done
They have to.
fee.
They have to, because they have to do unit cost.
Okay.
The next question 5 of the same first addendum says the general contractor is responsible for all soil compaction tests during construction and supplying test reports to the owner confirming specified compaction rates are achieved. The owner reserves the right to perform their own testing at any time during construction, unquote. What prompted the shifting of this cost to the town rather than the contractor? I'm going to read a couple of these because it all goes together. Why must towns spend more money on testing over and above the contract price if the contractor is doing his job? If I misinterpreted the meaning of this superseding question and answer, explain it, which I'll do. Then on April 30th, 2009, second addendum, question 14 from the Office of Town Manager. For whatever reason it is not explained, now supersedes the April 23rd addendum, question 5, and says, quote, all soil and earthwork testing will be responsibility of the owner, meaning the town. Why is it now the responsibility of the town/taxpayers to pay for this? What happened between April 23rd and April 30th to revert this cost to the town? Do you already know who the selected contractor for soil compaction and earthwork testing is? If so, who is it? How much money is there going to be to add to taxpayers' costs of these ball fields over and above the contract? Just tell us for once what something is going to cost the taxpayers of Summerfield for a capital project which has been fully laid out at a cost of thousands of taxpayer dollars, already for landscape architects, designs, and engineers, which the bidders were aware of before the bids were submitted. Essentially what it was is I made an error in trying to have the contractor be responsible for soil testing. The soil testing is to support the town's use of that property, which means that we need a third party who's working for the town, not the contractor, to test those soils, test those materials to make sure that they are appropriate. That's why I had a superseding addendum that says, no, the town is going to be responsible for that. If we're not responsible for it, then we don't know what the contractor would do. We would assume that they would play by the rules and do a fair test, but by making sure that the testing is done by the town, we are ensuring that they are building something to the specifications explained.
Okay, so how much more is this going to add to the cost of the ball fields?
I don't know right now. We haven't chosen a company, but based on the testing here, about $1,500 a year. About $1,500 to do the testing for this park. That's a larger park, but there's not as many, probably about the same amount of testing. It'd be under $10,000 would be my estimate, but again, we don't have that contract under contract.
But if they're required to do the compaction, the soil compaction according to a certain schedule, then if they haven't done it, once we do our testing, what are you going to do?
Then they have to do it. That's the whole point. Is if we go out and they say that it's been compacted to whatever it's specified, and we do a test and it's not, then they have to repair it.
Okay, why can't we put that in there and say they have to reimburse us if it's not according to the schedule? They have to reimburse us for our soil testing.
They're not. I would be very surprised if they would agree to that. This is a standard thing that happens. That the owner always does the testing, and I was incorrect in my first addendum.
Well, there are exceptions for standard things. $10,000 is a lot of money.
You could put in there if the soil standards or if the test does not meet the specifications, then the contractor could pay for subsequent testing.
We could make that request.
I think that would be fair. I don't know. I mean, when I worked in the past for an independent testing laboratory, and that has been specified in the specs before, it just kind of keeps them they really want to go ahead and get it right the first time.
We can make a request. We can make a request either way.
So you're saying it's not their job to do the testing?
Right.
That you made the error in the addendum, and it's not their job anyway to do the testing?
Right. It is our job to do the testing. It would be much better for us to do the testing than to leave it up to them to do the testing. Because they're control.
owner would want to provide the compaction testing, and it came from the contractor paying the testing company, okay, then the testing company under his direction, okay? So that it as a construction standard has become the industry standard for the owner to employ the testing laboratory, because then the testing laboratory has the owner's aspect in first consideration, not the contractor who's paying him.
Okay.
So, I mean, we will, you know, we're doing the work, we're gonna compact the soil, but for your proof of record, then he is working for you. And as far as how much you spend, is how much would you like to get tested?
Right.
The more you have tested, naturally, the more that you spend.
Right, and my concern is, how much is this project gonna cost? You know, I want to know what all
I
the
think
additions would be.
his budget information, I would say, is appropriate, from what knowledge that I have. And you can hire that testing company either on a lump sum basis or on a per hour basis at the discretion of the town. Parks and Recreation, you know, can say, I would like to test it today. They can come out and spend 1 hour, or you can say lump sum, and I want you there full time. If you do that, his budget is probably not correct. So again, it's up to the owner as to how much do they want to spend just to, you know, justify the fact that it is compaction.
Based on your experience, doing what you do, what's the minimum and what's the maximum that could be spent for soil compaction testing here?
I think that his $10,000 budget is appropriate for probably.
You think that's the max that it would be?
Yeah, that's my opinion. To confirm that, get 2-3 quotes from different testing laboratories and an hourly rate with a lump sum price, and then the council or whoever could make the decision the way they would like to proceed with that. They can get a guaranteed lump sum or any per hour price and proceed with the testing either way. Then you would have a guaranteed max. But again, it's going to get back to how often do they run tests, how many tests do you want run? If we're as big as this building and it's good over there and it's all the same, then it'll be good here. So you can spend basically, you know, what is appropriate, or that's the reason it's left up to the owners, how much they spend on testing, that they're satisfied
Okay.
with the results.
Thank you for your explanation.
Mr. Mayor, just so you know, Mr. Crawford did have a question in San Jose, so I just want to bring that to your attention.
Right, I was going to ask him to answer that discussion right now, so.
Okay, top of the third page, question 7 on the 2G addendum dated April 30, 2009, asks if the project timeline is a fixed schedule. The answer by the town manager is, quote, "The project timeline in the bid is not a fixed schedule. It says the intent to make clear the owner intends for the project to be built as quickly as possible, given the constraints of construction of this type. Therefore, it is important for the bidder to indicate a preliminary project timeline based on bid specifications. The final project timeline and any penalties for not meeting that deadline will be part of a final contract for the selected bidder." The contract is 6 months. They are telling us they will do this in 6 months from the date that this contract is signed.
Okay, so why don't we put something in there that we want the timeline? I mean, they're saying it's a timeline, so.
Well, because that's the timeline that they're telling us it'll take to build the project.
Given all the potential
Given
problems
all
that there
the
might be.
potential problems, they're telling us 6 months.
Okay.
That's what they're doing. Now, the question was asked earlier, and it also asked the question, well, let me read a little bit further. First of all, there should be a project timeline, which, as I said, is 6 months. There'll be a detailed timeline that they're working on, now that they have the updated meter standards, et cetera. The fixed schedule is 6 months. It is the contractor's problem what the constraints of construction of this type will be. That's true, and they've accounted for that in that 6
In the
months.
6 months.
Unless there's a acts of God beyond that, and I'll get to that in a moment,
Okay.
how we're going to address that.
Taking into the fact that it's gonna be winter part of the time, they're gonna be building
It's
for
all part of
winter.
their.
They
it's all-
still say 6 months?
Yes.
Okay.
Secondly, how can the town enforce penalties for not meeting the deadline when there is no deadline for completion set forth in the actual contract? Yeah, there is 6 months. There's not a penalty section mentioned